if you look at female football in Saudi Arabia, this is only I think it's the second year that they've had the professional Saudi Arabia Women's Premier League, which obviously consists of 8 teams. They've got the first division now, which consists of I think around 17 teams.
Yeah.
I think there's been a growth of, last year alone, I think there was an increase of 86% of females playing football within Saudi Arabia. The numbers are just incredible. Over 48,000 girls playing football in RTCs and in the schools within Saudi Arabia. And I think a lot of people don't realise these numbers, and a lot of people don't realise the opportunities that these young players and these young girls are getting in Saudi Arabia. And I must admit, I was one of those people, in the Western world, fueled by the Western media, and being quite ignorant to what Saudi Arabia and what the government are trying to do over here to better the lives of females, and to change some of the perceptions that a lot of people, a lot of Westerners have on Saudi Arabia and the country, and some of the laws and opportunities that they provide. There's a long way to go, of course, but it's certainly progressing at an unbelievable rate, and there's certainly been some unbelievable changes happening within the last 3 to 5 years. A beginning, really, to be honest with you. And I think that even if you look at some of the signings that we've announced recently, Norm Mustafa, Salma Armani, Ashley Plumtree, got a lot of media attention, and I think that's opened a lot of people's eyes, and there'll be a lot of eyes now looking at women's football in Saudi Arabia, because some of those players are playing at the highest level in women's football, and they chose to come here. And it's a lot of people will say it's for the money, and it's not just for the money. It's what's happening here is an unbelievable movement, and those that are interested and want to be a part of that have passion to be a part of that, and have passion to change and have an unbelievable impact on people's lives, and be role models like some of these players will be to young girls.
So let's dive into it. So really talk to me about kind of your coaching background. So obviously, you went there to Saudi Arabia, but really talk to me about where it really kind of started out for you.
I guess my first taste of coaching was probably when I was actually working in rugby. I was at university at Leeds Beckett, and I sort of wanted to do a little bit more on the side. I sort of understood that there's going to be thousands of people coming out with the same degree as me at university, just in my university, let alone all the universities around the country, around the world. So I was always looking for ways to try and, I guess, have that edge, have that advantage over people I was coming up against when I was sort of applying for jobs in the future. So I applied to do some volunteering for Leeds Rhinos, which is obviously a rugby league team, and that was sort of my first touch of coaching. Rugby was never my sport. I never played it. I never even understood the rules at the time, to be honest with you. But it was an opportunity. Leeds is obviously a big rugby city, a big football city as well, of course, but it was an opportunity to go in and do some coaching. So I started to help out within the strength and conditioning department there. And then that soon led on to bigger things, and started to work at Castleford Tigers, just down the road, and doing some actual S&C work for them.
Yeah.
And then sort of that went on, and football was always my sport. It was always my game. It was always where I wanted to be. So I went on and I went to West Ham. So I moved from the north to the south of England. I went on to West Ham, where I was acting as the under-23 sports scientist there for a period of time, and then slowly transitioned into the coaching side of things in football. So, as I said, started off in sort of that SNC/sports science department, if you like. That was what my degree was in as well at university, and then that sort I guess got my foot into the game, into sports, and then I quickly realised that I wanted to be hands on and doing more of the coaching, the technical coaching. So it was a mentor of mine at the time, a guy called Greg DeCarnis, who I owe a lot to. He sort of took me under his wing for many years, and still does today. And he went across into the women's team as the head coach and wanted me to go with him. And so that was sort of where my coaching journey started, really. Obviously, there's been a lot of bits and pieces in between that, but that was sort of the first bigger role I had, if you like. And then that sort of progressed through to becoming the assistant coach at West Ham Women for, I think, over 5 years, the academy director, academy manager at West Ham for equal amount of time, and then obviously going on to Manchester United, and then brings me to here in Saudi Arabia.
What attracted you to the women's game?
It's a great question. I started off obviously in the men's game, as I said, with the under-23s team at West Ham. That was my first flavour of a professional football environment. And then it was, as I said, it was Greg who was offered the role in women's football, and asked me to go with him. And it was I've never worked in women's sports before. I've never really coached too many female athletes before at the time. But it was an opportunity that sounded extremely ambitious. It was an opportunity that sounded like everybody involved in it was full of passion. And I quickly learned that everybody involved in the project and everybody involved in women's sport and women's football is extremely passionate, is extremely ambitious, and all want this to go in one direction, and that's to get it to as big as it can possibly be. To be a part of that, to be a part of like-minded people, and to be surrounded by like-minded people that are trying to get this to the biggest place possible is extremely refreshing to step into that type of environment every single day. And I think that's one of the things I'm extremely grateful for, being involved in women's football.
Yeah, for sure. And then it brought you off to Saudi Arabia. And how did that move kind of progress? Because you obviously went from kind of West Ham to sort of Man United, and then going to obviously Saudi Arabia. Is only in the last few years we've seen a lot of players, a lot of kind of managers heading out there, but only to really the men's side of Saudi Arabia. Now, obviously, we don't know, and I'm something gonna lie, like I don't know much about kind of really like just the women's game out there and how much that's kind of grown. So really talk to me about that kind of project.
Yeah, it was it was extremely surprising for me. I got a phone call of a guy called Nick McCreary, who sort of runs and owns the Jobs for Football business. And we've been in contact in the past, back and forth, me and Nick, around various opportunities that he had. He nearly sent me to Asia 3 or 4 years previously. Didn't quite work out. But he gave me a call one evening and sort of presented the role and asked if I was interested. It's actually quite funny because at the time I was at Man United, which is my club. It's the club I've supported since a little boy. It's the club that my family are absolutely bonkers about. And I remember when I was young saying to my grandma, she used to ask us, what do we want to do when we're older, as grandmas often do. And I said, Grandma, I don't mind. As long as I work for Man United, I don't mind if I make the cup of teas, if I cut the grass, whatever I do, I want to work for Man United. So that was always my sort of one of the goals in my life. And obviously I'd achieved that. So putting on the Man United kit every day to go to work was unbelievable for me. I had an extremely amazing time whilst I was there. So something to get me away from that job had to be something incredibly big, incredibly ambitious, and that's exactly what this role was. I had meetings with the clubs, with the management side of the clubs, and from the very first Zoom call that we had, I could see the way they were speaking that this was an ambitious project. Whenever I look for new opportunities, or whether new opportunities present themselves, they have to be ambitious. And the other side of it for me here was um, the impact that I could have and we could all have on changing people's lives over here in the Middle East, especially obviously females. I was working in England. I was played a small part in the development of female football in England for 5 or 6 years, and I saw this as an opportunity to come over here and do exactly the same thing. So as I said, speaking to the management from day one, it's certainly interested in it from the start. And we had various Zoom calls. We was having meetings for over probably around 2 or 3 months. But yeah, I think I was probably sold from very early on, just because of the impact that I could have on people's lives here, the journey that we could take some of these people on that are involved in with Ittihad women's team. Speaking to the head coach, her ambitions, speaking to, as I said, the management team and the ambitions that they've got, and just seeing this grow. I truly believe that this is going to grow and be something absolutely huge. And everybody that is on this journey is going to look back in X amount of years and have a real pride of being a part of this journey, because we're only at the start. This is only the beginning. But I think it's got massive ambition, and this can be something great, and it can impact many lives for the better.
Yeah, because I think it's really interesting because a lot of people because around kind of there are saying, why are these big players or these big coaches kind of moving to really Saudi Arabia, if you like? And a lot of people say it's money and stuff like that. But there is a massive market out here. There are people that love football, and obviously myself, because I've also been here, there are huge fan bases out here, and it's it is going like that, up and up and up. Really the ambitions there. What can you see kind of with the women's game? Because obviously see the men's game really going up, but is that also the same between the women's game and also the men's game?
I think, yeah, I think obviously both games are extremely different. Both have their different challenges, and both are accelerating at different rates. And the female game is accelerating at an absolute rapid rate. I mean, if you look at female football in Saudi Arabia, this is only I think it's the second year that they've had the professional Saudi Arabia Women's Premier League, which obviously consists of 8 teams. They've got the first division now, which consists of I think around 17 teams.
Yeah.
I think there's been a growth of last year alone. I think there was an increase of 86% of females playing football within Saudi Arabia. The numbers are just incredible. Over 48,000 girls playing football in RTCs and in the schools within Saudi Arabia. And I think a lot of people don't realize these numbers, and a lot of people don't realize the opportunities that these young players and these young girls are getting in Saudi Arabia. And I must admit, I was one of those people, in the Western world, fueled by the Western media, and being quite ignorant to what Saudi Arabia and what the government are trying to do over here to better the lives of females, and to change some of the perceptions that a lot of people, a lot of Westerners have on Saudi Arabia and the country, and some of the laws and opportunities that they provide. There's a long way to go, of course, but it's certainly progressing at an unbelievable rate, and there's certainly been some unbelievable changes happening within the last 3 to 5 years. I think football as a whole in Saudi Arabia, whether it's men's, whether it's women, it's the number 1 sport in the country. It's probably the number 2 sport in the country, and probably the number 3 sport in the country. People are absolutely crazy for it here. If you look back, it was only, I think, in 2018 that women were allowed to go into stadiums. But it's progress, and if we go from 2018 to now, as I said, some of those numbers a second ago, it's developing at such a rapid rate. We've got full-time professional league here. We have everything in our program at Ittihad that you'd expect to have at the top league in England. Players are full-time. Players are receiving full-time salaries. Saudi Arabia as a nation is now FIFA ranked.
Yeah.
the opportunities they're providing for young players in RTCs from the age of around about 8 years old all the way to under 17s that they have now. It's incredible, the movement, and as I said, it's an honour to be a part of that and to just help kick it forward. I think this is only the beginning, really, to be honest with you. And I think that even if you look at some of the signings that we've announced recently, Noor Mustafa, Salma Armani, Ashley Plumtree, got a lot of media attention, and I think that's opened a lot of people's eyes, and there'll be a lot of eyes now looking at women's football in Saudi Arabia, because some of those players are playing at the highest level in women's football, and they chose to come here. And it's a lot of people will say it's for the money, and it's not just for the money. It's what's happening here is an unbelievable movement, and those that are interested and want to be a part of that have passion to be a part of that, and have passion to change and have an unbelievable impact on people's lives, and be role models like some of these players will be to young girls.
For sure, Buzz. But how have you seen really the growth between kind of the women's rights now in Saudi Arabia? Because as you said, they weren't allowed because even in the grounds they were allowed to drive a few years ago. But now that's obviously changed, and it's obviously kind of progressed. But how big is that change? And if you were talking to a person right now that was really isolated because in the UK now saying no, it's not changed. If you were sat with them now, how big has that changed, and how big has that moved forward?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's always difficult for me to speak as a male in Saudi Arabia. But I think from what I can sense and what I can see and what I've spoken to females that are in this country, the whole place, the country as a whole is extremely welcoming. They can't do enough for you. We're training at the main training ground. It's not the men's training ground. It's shared. It's a shared facility. We're out there. We're training on the pitch next to some of these unbelievable superstars in the men's game that you hear of, Benzema and Jota, and these superstars that the men's team have signed, and we're on the field next to them training. It's not I think that the development of the women's rights here. Look, I've only been here 3 or 4 months or so. So, from what I hear, within the last 5 years or so, the changes that the government have brought in, the impacts that women are able to do a lot more, like you said, just like driving or being allowed in stadiums. The whole country as a whole seems extremely excited, extremely happy for these changes, and they long may it continue. I think that the government and their vision with the 2030 vision, everybody's extremely excited. It's an unbelievable time to be in the country and a part of this growth, of this development, and hopefully we can play our part to help push that along, and as I said, helped impact these people's lives for the better. We want them all to dream. We want them all to dream to be whatever they wish to be, whatever that is, whether it's a football or whether it's something else. But ultimately, we're using football, we're using women's football and women's sport to allow these people to be the best versions of themselves as people. That's the most important part.
And how kind of big can this get? Because obviously with the transfer, because with Alicia, and all these other big names that you said before, how big can really the women's game get in the next 5 years? How big can it really get?
I mean, you've only got to look at look. This is year 2, and as I said, it's attracted some of the best names in women's football. I think that the investment that's going into football in Saudi Arabia, women's football in Saudi Arabia, is unprecedented. The investment, I think, just in 1 year alone, I think the federation invested over 14 million just in a single year, which is incredible amounts. The progress that it's making, the players, the players that are coming in, the coaches that are coming in, the infrastructure that's getting put into place, the increase in participation that's happening, the coach education courses that are being run and put on for local coaches. it's being done properly. It's being done extremely thoroughly, and it's being done, by the right people. So I think that where this can go is wherever it wishes to go. There's no ceiling on this. I genuinely, honestly think this can be one of the best leagues in women's football in years to come. I honestly think that there'll be a lot of people wishing to be a part of this and wanting to be a part of this, and there already are.
Yeah.
But just like the men's vision, they want to be one of the best leagues, and it's exactly the same with the women's. It wants to be one of the best leagues in women's football, and I honestly think that's an achievement that can be made.
When you kind of what because obviously you're with the Al Ittihad right now, and kind of what are their targets now? With because with your team, obviously we kind of mentioned the big names that have obviously come to your club. What is the target now?
We're not here to finish second. we we want to win, of course. Everybody wants to win. One of the main reasons we're all a part of this, and we all coach and we all get into first team football is to win. So we want to go and we want to win the league. We want to win the cup.
Yeah.
Next year, whoever wins the league this year will be entered into the Asian Champions League, which is obviously huge.
Yeah.
So we want to go and do the best we can. There's a different side to things, of course. That's the football side. There's a huge piece, which you can almost call the off-field stuff, which is, look, we want to make sure that our environment is the best possible environment that we can make it, and that's everything that's included. So the medical, the sports science, the analysis, the coaching, the player care, everything that goes into a football environment. We want it to be the best possible place that females can come here and women can come here and be the best version of themselves. So yes, of course, we want to make them better players. Yes, of course, we want to win the championship. But actually, we also want to make sure that we are making these players, making these young women to better them however way we possibly can together. It's not just us saying do this, do that, and they do it. We're all in this together, and we want to make sure that everybody, staff, players, everybody involved, enjoys the journey. Everybody gets so caught up in getting to the end goal and winning trophies and lifting trophies, but if you're not enjoying the journey, then what's the real point of doing it? So we want to make it. We want this to be seen as one of the best environments to come here and be a female footballer wherever you're from.
Yeah, please. Like, I want to talk a bit more of that. Really do kind of with the environment. I talked to managers I'm on here before, and the only thing that they say to me is about the environment and making sure it's like a high performing environment. It's not just on the pitch. It's all about the behaviours that are off the pitch, and it's set by the owners, it's set by the manager directors, it's set by the assistants. It's everybody in the whole organisation really really pushing forward. So talk to me about, like, because you've only been there for a few months, but talk to me about the kind of environment there, about what it's like, and what it's like really compared to maybe an environment at Man United or really West Ham. Talk to me about that.
It's listen, it's very similar. We have, as I said, a full-time program. We have all the departments that you'd find at a club in the WSL. We have a medical team that's worked for Barcelona, Real Madrid. We have both local and international staff. We have an unbelievable management team who, in England we would call sort of the general manager. I think they call it team manager here. Yeah. But they're unbelievable at what they do. They push, they get us everything that we possibly need, and more. They look after us in an unbelievable way. Honestly, no stone is left unturned, and I think they deserve massive credit for pushing this project and pushing this ambition. We have obviously all the sports science side of things. We have a sports scientist who's just got back from the World Cup. Obviously, we have our coaching department, our head coach, Kelly Lynchy, our goalkeeper coach, Dan Smith, who have worked at the highest level. So in terms of our setup. It's it's like you said, it's we want to achieve high performance, but I think the difference here is within high performance we have to almost look at it as progressive performance at the same time.
Yeah.
So if we was to come in here on day one, and we was to implement everything that we're used to, all the different departments and the intensity of what a day looks like and what a week looks like, I think it would have been too much too soon. So we've had to slowly drip things in. We've had to be patient at times with what we expect and what we look for and what we're used to, because the level is still progressing, and the players are still progressing, and we have to be cautious with making sure that we don't implement too much too soon. But at the same time, that in itself is extremely rewarding, extremely sort of, if you like, satisfying to see that yes, we are a high performing team. But at the same time, as I've mentioned, we want to make sure that we are progressing at the right rate and not just doing things and copy and pasting models that we're used to in the past, because I, for one, am certainly not a believer of just copy and pasting a model that you've been at just because it's Manchester United or just because it's West Ham, or just because it's Leeds Rhino, wherever the environment may be. Every environment is different. Every environment is unique. Every environment has got different players in it, got different staff in it. There's different rules. There's different cultures. So you have to take all that into account. And the first 6 weeks or so was simply just getting used to the environment, and just figuring it out. I've never been to Saudi Arabia. The closest I've been is Dubai on a holiday. So just working out the culture, working out how people like to do things here, things like implementing nutrition and nutrition protocols. Actually, okay, we may have our gold standard way of doing things, but we have to adapt that. We have to adapt that for the players. We may like to do things on the pitch in a certain way as coaches, but we may have to adapt that. So it's making sure that yes, we're aiming for high performance and we're aiming to be the best possible environment we can be, but we also have to take into account all these unique things at the same time, and with that we have to keep progressing, and every day is a day for progression, every week's a week for progression, and we'll continue to progress as a team, and I think that's what probably the most important thing that we have to keep our eyes focused on here.
How will you view success about your time in Saudi Arabia, in maybe 10 years' time, when you look back on
it? For me, as I've said, it's I'd love to look back and really feel that the small part that we are playing as a team is going to have a positive impact on people's lives. That's the players that we're working with now. That's the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old girls who are looking up to these players and seeing them as role models. That's creating further opportunities for local staff to come in any department, for local players to come in. And I think that players at the moment, our players and all players here, and it's more than just them playing the game, and it's the same for us staff. It's more than us just coaching the game. It's more than just winning a football match at the weekend. We can have such a bigger impact than that, and for me that's what I'd love to look back on in X amount of years and say, look at the growth that has been made here in female football in Saudi Arabia, and obviously across the world, wherever that may be.
And just lastly now, what would the advice be to a younger player now that's really looking to move to Saudi Arabia and ask you, what is it like? What would you say to them? What do you like kind of advise them to do?
I'd probably say don't read the stuff you read on Twitter. Don't read the local newspapers. Don't. No, but on a serious note, I think like anybody that's the amount of messages that I've received from ex-players, from staff that I've worked with, from current players, but ex-players that I've worked with that are interested, that want to come out here, that are asking what it's like. That in itself is progress. That in itself means that our eyes are watching it and that people are intrigued. I think that, look, I can only speak for our environment at Ittihad, but it's exactly what you expect to find in a full-time professional high performance system. As I said, we're a full-time program. We train every day. We have analysis. We have a unbelievable medical team. We have all the sports science. We have all the nutrition. We have all the rest of the recovery. We have everything that you'd expect to see in a program in the WSL. But I think as I said, we're even with our recruitment. So a big piece for us obviously was recruitment, and obviously we want to make sure we recruit the right player. But we had a massive drive to recruit the right people as well. People that want to come here and share the same values of what we're trying to do off the field as well as on the field. But for anybody that's interested, I think it's amazing that people are showing interest. And I think my advice would be just to ask questions, be curious. It's just watch the games. All the games are going to be live streamed. All the games are going to be on television. Have a look, and then obviously you could form your own opinions from that, rather than just being brainwashed, I think, by some of the media and some of the things that get said.
For sure, Myles, and I do really appreciate this. I think a lot of people kind of are still not really aware of what really is kind of going on, and really the positive impact it is having on really the population there, really the younger children, as you mentioned there, which is a key factor really, because there are young people that never really seen anything like this before. They're looking all over the world, in England, in France, in Germany, Spain, and now it's happening to them. And that's what's really amazing about it, that these young people have having the chance to obviously really kind of express themselves with really world-class facilities. So I obviously really appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
No worries. Thanks ever so much. Much appreciated.
Yes.